Hey everyone, it's Alex Telck. We want to reach people where they're at, not where we think they should be. And if you like what you hear today and you want to tell us your story on the show or just reach out, then email me at atelk@twny.life. And remember, it's okay to not be okay.
I've seen the devil's shadow underneath the moon. Keep that fire going, the sun is coming soon.
All right, well, welcome to the second TWNY podcast. Got another guest here, another family member, good cousin Jesse Berry. How you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Yeah, we kind of figured going along with these podcasts, you'll notice that we're having a lot of family first. We have, we do have people signed up to do it, and but we figured we'd kind of, I don't want to say clean up our own backyard type deal, but we figured that, if we're going to be putting people in the hot seat, we might as well have our family in the hot seat first since we're doing this,
Well, I'm trying to get other people to tell their stories. I mean, if we can't tell ours, then what's going to say they're going to want to tell theirs,
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the goal is to take that first step, you know what I mean? And let people know that it's all right to do it. So just before we even get started, just like last time, I kind of want to just reiterate that, we're not doctors as much as Jesse likes to think he is.
I'm also a Batman. So, I mean, between being Batman and a fake doctor, it's
a man of many talents.
Yep.
Wear a lot of hats.
Full schedule. Yeah.
But yeah, no, so we're not doctors. And I like to think of what we're doing as kind of a supplement for therapy, not a replacement. If you really need help, if you're in a serious situation where you are, you have a mental illness or you are going through something like that, then by all means seek out real medical attention and don't rely on just our podcast and our TWNY nonprofit to get you through it.
Well, and especially being like where I've gone to therapy and everything, using this as like a supplement to help you through kind of and ask the questions that need to be asked when you're in therapy. Because like, especially when I was doing it, I had no clue what to even ask. It was just going in and like, you talk about your feelings a little bit, but I mean, they don't give like unreal amounts of feedback as to, what you're feeling. So asking the questions is to, okay, what can I do to help me feel this way, or like react to different scenarios instead of just venting to them and then being like, okay, well, there's my money and I didn't get anything out of this.
Yeah.
Being able to like talk about or figure out what questions you need to be able to ask. So, and feel comfortable asking those questions to a licensed therapist or a doctor or somebody, where, I mean, we're just regular Joe Blows that, venting helps and talking about it helps a ton, but learning the stuff that like, especially from like prior experiences, asking just random questions to them, because I mean, they'll answer and they'll give you what you need to know.
And they have that unique insight into, what makes a person tick, what might be like the underlying cause for all of this stuff. You know what I mean? And that's the real important.
Like kindergarten, when you like stubbed your toe on the end of the nightstand and it traumatized you for your whole life. I mean, not that the whole therapy thing's a joke. I'm not saying it's, but they're able to go back and look and see what could make your brain develop, because I mean, your brain's constantly developing as you're growing older. And I mean, even up until now, I mean, I'm almost 30, and I mean, you learn something new every day. And something that when you were 8 years old could be affecting you and how your trust issues or your anxiety or anything else, because you've lived that, and they're able to pinpoint that and be like, hey, maybe you can move past this, or, maybe you need to talk to this person, or maybe you need to ask that person a question to make it to where, hey, I can move on from this and maybe be able to go dancing again.
Yeah. Hey, no, that's really good insight into that, man. I really, I like that. And kind of segueing off of that, you're really no stranger to just like everybody who watches or who has found our podcast and everyone else who hasn't yet, or just anyone out there, you're no stranger to hard times,
No, definitely. In fact, I looking back in my life, you'd think that I enjoy finding them. To be completely honest, I mean, go out of my way to put myself in these weird situations that I could probably easily avoid. But if you don't learn it the hard way, I feel like you probably don't learn anything at all.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20.
Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, if you'd want to elaborate, if you care to, on just kind of just some of those times that you've gone through, some of those things that you've had to endure.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm 28 years old. I'm single dad of a 6-year-old that has the attitude of her mother. I've been divorced twice, which not really anything to brag about, I can tell you that. But I mean, if you questions about divorce, I mean, I got it.
Oh yeah.
Been through custody battles, breakups, pregnancy scares. I mean, there's tons of stuff that like, and just consistently working. I worked on the road for 9 months doing pipeline. I was extremely lucky for the 9 years that I did pipeline. I was around Colorado, so I was able to leave at like 3 a.m. and be home by 9 at night, but still be home every night, except for about 8 or 9 months out of that whole 9 years that I actually was traveling. I was anywhere from 10 to 26 hours away from home. And at that point I was still married to my first wife. And it was honestly the anxiety issues. I actually had lost, I struggled with weight throughout high school. I mean, as you remember, like we both kind of did.
Yeah, we were both very light.
My senior year, I was 4'11" and 98 pounds for graduation. I mean, I wasn't big. I wasn't anything. And then a couple months after, I jumped up to 150 pounds, and I was like, nice, like, cool.
Yeah.
That was like goals right there. Finally broke 100. And then I ended up actually, when I was in Pennsylvania, my anxiety got so bad. And I mean, I would eat, but I was consistently worried. And a lot of people don't realize that like your depression and your anxiety contribute like your body's consistently working. I actually dropped down to, I was 109 pounds. And wow. That's just over a 2-month period. I had lost 40 some pounds just like that. And I didn't even notice it, but I was skin and bones.
Was that anxiety? So first thing, was that period of time that you said the 8 or 9 months that you were gone, was that consecutive? Was that all at one time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think I had been home twice over that whole period. And it was just for like a day. And I was working in Freeport, Texas, and my ex-wife, my daughter's mother, and my daughter were living in Lee Forest, Texas, which is about 10 and a half hour drive. And I mean, anybody that knows me, I don't fly anywhere. I flew to Vegas one time and I refused to ever fly again. It's horrible. But so I would drive it. So I would leave, we'd get off work. We knew that we were getting rained out the next day or something like that. And I would leave work at 5 o'clock that night, drive all the way through the night, sleep as soon as I got there until 9 or 10 in the morning, wake up, spend a few hours with my daughter, leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then drive straight back so that I could start working again. And so, I mean, there was, I think, two or three times max that I was actually home to see my daughter and my wife at the time. And I mean, we'd FaceTime regularly every night. It had just gotten to the point that I couldn't, like, your mind's running like a million miles an hour. And like, you could have the healthiest relationship in the world. And it's fine. Sorry. You could have like the healthiest relationship in the world and still have thoughts, and that's the anxiety part of it. That's the anxiety part of it, is it'll eat at you to where you're thinking that something's going on. Oh, she didn't text me back. Just push the 100 and start. Sorry, she's trying to microwave chicken nuggets.
Hey man, life doesn't stop for a podcast. It's all good.
Yeah. So like, as far as like the anxiety, like it gives you the thought in your mind that something's going on behind your back that's not actually happening. Yeah. And I mean, there's still times to this day that like I think back and it plays tricks on you, that like I think back about all that stuff and you're like, hey, like maybe something was going on. Like maybe that gut feeling, because it's something that, I mean, we were always taught as we were younger. I mean, you always trust your gut instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, looking back at it now, I'm like, okay, well, maybe something was going on, but also you're like, well, maybe something wasn't. And it's one of those, like, now that I'm divorced, I'll never know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those. It is what it is. Like, I'm not super worried about it now. Like, I guess I'm doing fine in my life. Like, we were supposed to have the podcast last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, which is good we didn't, because I was actually in a pretty big low. Like, as far as like my depression actually kicked in, and I was just not. I was not in the right mind. I wasn't feeling anything. Actually,
Yeah.
I laid on the couch and didn't do anything for a whole weekend. I mean, I needed to clean my house. I wanted to go ride. I needed to work on my project truck. I needed like a whole lot of stuff that I needed to do. I just didn't do it.
You also needed to take that time for yourself, you know,
Yeah,
because
I needed to sit there and I needed to relax. And what actually helped me is my current girlfriend. I came home and there was just this giant basket sitting on my front door. And anybody that knows me knows that I am a ginormous Ryan Reynolds fan. In fact, I don't know who isn't. I mean, he is the sexiest man alive.
right?
I mean, I mean, I would go gay for Ryan Reynolds. There's no doubt. I mean, I'm pretty sure 100% of the male population probably would as well.
And if they say no, they're probably lying.
Oh, exactly. I mean, there's two people in this world. There's the people that would go gay for Ryan Reynolds, and then there's liars. So, but I had like almost every Ryan Reynolds movie that she could find in the Walmart bin,
Mm-hmm.
and a crap load of fucking candy. And I was like, all right, sweet. So I laid down and I watched like 2 Ryan Reynolds movies, and he died in both of them, which is completely horrible. Like, you never end a
that's
Ryan
terrible.
Reynolds movie with him dying. Like,
That's
you don't.
terrible.
And my girlfriend's laying there giving me crap the whole time. She's like, "Oh, your man died. Your man died." And I was like, "No, he didn't. He's still alive.
You're supposed to be making me feel better.
Yeah, he's Deadpool. He can't die." You know, and it's one of those, like, and I even told her, I was like, "Hey, like, I'm not trying to be distant with you, and I know it seems like I've been distant, but I'm in a really bad low right now, and I don't know." And first question, and this is a question that, like, I swear everybody gets when they're like, "Hey, I'm in a low." It's why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I knew, I probably wouldn't be in a low.
Mm-hmm.
But
you can't really explain it sometimes.
No, it's a dirty, sick trick that your mind plays on you. That it's like, hey, you're sad today, and it's one of those that they could last anywhere from, I mean, it lasted me that day when I came home, and I was able to sit down and I was able to breathe and relax and see that, hey, like, you're okay. Because I mean, I've got tons of goals and stuff going on right now that I'm trying to accomplish. Like, I mean, I'm going through bankruptcy. I'm doing a whole lot of stuff just from that I should have done. I should have done my bankruptcy 3 years ago after my first divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, because anybody that's been through a divorce knows that your credit's screwed after. Like, it's horrible. And so I'm getting that done. I'm trying to get my project truck built. I'm trying to do a whole lot of stuff that I felt were goals for myself since my first divorce. And it's weighed a lot on me, especially with, I mean, I've had attorneys galore this year. I paid for an attorney for court for my daughter to get custody of my daughter. I actually got a DUI in January. Paid an attorney for that, which did not go good at all.
And they're not cheap.
No. And then now the attorney for the bankruptcy. So this is my year of attorneys, I guess. And they're not cheap. I can tell you the custody one was worth it. The DUI one was not really worth it. I mean, I pretty much got the same thing minus 5 days of jail. And the way stuff's going now, it's one of those, I probably should have just went to jail. But I've learned quite a bit from it, and actually not drinking, because I've pretty well quit drinking I've got UAs and stuff that I have to do. But I've pretty well quit drinking for the last 2, almost 3 months. And I mean, given the instances, there was a couple times that I had a drink or so.
Mm-hmm.
Given actually right after my sister died, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, one of my best friends died. He had overdosed, or they think, or they're not sure. They're waiting on tox results. I mean,
Sorry to hear that.
he had passed away, and I mean it's honestly, it's just been a crap year,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to like work through it, and we came together over my friend's death. We'd come together and we'd all talked and everything else, and we're able to actually, I mean, I took 3 or 4 days off, and I just spent that time down there with them, talking about the good times, reminiscing on the good times, and focusing on the good times, so that it wasn't dragging everybody else down.
Mm-hmm.
And but also, realizing that the actual truth of it, of him being gone, and then also with the truth of like my sister being gone, it was such a surreal feeling. And it was a lot easier to go through the grieving process with my friend dying. I mean, and it sounds messed up, but as far as, I wasn't angry, I wasn't like when my sister did, because I was mad when she
Mm-hmm.
died. And I mean, instantly, it wasn't because she had died. I was mad at her because it wasn't me. I always had it in my mind that like that was my job. Like I was gonna be that guy. And I was okay with it. Like I had gotten to the point that, especially after my first divorce, I had got into drinking so bad
Mm-hmm.
that like we did 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off with my daughter for a while, and I'd drop her off and my daughter would be gone for 2 weeks. And the minute that I dropped her off, I was at the liquor store and I was picking up a bottle of Crown and a 24 pack of Coors Light, and I was sitting in the shower. I would have a hot shower running, and I wouldn't leave the shower. I mean, I'd turn it off if it got cold, but I'd still just sit in the shower, and I wouldn't leave there until that bottle of Crown was gone. And shower beers, I mean, everybody loves shower beers. Those are the best. But it got to the point that, I mean, I figured that I was just going to drink myself to death, because that's something that you always hear about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, all right, well, that's not working. I was like, I'm just creating this like massive tolerance for alcohol. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. So I actually, it was my 45. I believe it was the same with Daryl, but I was sitting in the shower and I was a bottle of Crown deep, and I just sat in there and I had it in my mouth, and there was nobody. I mean, there was obviously like my family and stuff, but it's one of those that like at that time, one of those, I'm not gonna call them. Like my mom's one of my best friends. Like I'm not gonna call my mom and be like, hey, conveniently I have a 45 in my mouth right now. I'm a bottle of Crown Royal Deep, about 15 Coors Lights, and I think I'm just gonna call it a day. I mean, that's not something that you call your mom and you talk about.
100%.
And I was living 2 hours away in Greeley, and it's something that like I didn't want her to worry. And my daughter was gone for 2 weeks. Somebody would have found me. Somebody would have heard a gunshot. Somebody would have come in. And it's one of those, I don't know what saved me. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that, well, I mean, yeah, I pussied out. I was a crybaby about it. I couldn't do it, which, I mean, in hindsight now, like I'm happy that I did.
I am too.
But yeah, I mean, that one, I don't know. I feel like the shower probably would have been the place to do it though. Less mess. But I mean, I had it planned out, and that wasn't the first time. I mean, I couldn't do it that time. And then the next time came that I dropped my daughter off, and I was in the same boat for 2 whole weeks, and somehow it was over and over again. I was finding myself in my shower drinking bottles of Crown with my 45. And it was one of those that I became okay with it. Like the first couple times, like I was sitting there bawling my eyes out. And I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And then it got to the point that when I was doing it, I was like, yeah, I was like, all right, let, let's do this. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't cry about it. It was just one of those, like, I became okay with wanting to kill myself, but not doing it because I was like, oh, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. You know, there's no
Mm-hmm.
saying that there wasn't one chamber that I accidentally slip and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I wouldn't be here doing a podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but it never happened. And then it got to the point that I actually, me and my first ex-wife had started getting back together, and she had wanted to do marriage counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a place. We did it weekly. Every Wednesday, as soon as I got off work, it was at like 5:30 or 6 o'clock. We would go in and we would sit in there with this therapist for an hour, and we did it for a month. And then I found some stuff that she was running around, basically. I mean, she says she wasn't, but I mean, I physically saw the proof.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I mean, every day after, or every week after we'd get done with counseling, she'd take off with her friend, and they were going to this guy's house, or they were going to see this other guy. And I didn't know anything about it until my daughter actually had her tablet and was asking me to press play or like find this video on YouTube for her or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And I was actually living with her at the time. And I was trying to find the video, and the text message popped up. Her phone was linked to her tablet, and the text message popped up of that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just
Mm-hmm.
found the video for my daughter, and everybody says that, like, I mean, I always said it when I was younger, like, if I ever caught her cheating, like, they're both dead.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, the minute that I did, I texted her and I was like, hey, when you get home, I think we need to have a talk. And then you go through the whole spiel, blah blah blah. I moved into my own place like the next day because I was like, yeah, I can't do this. Moved into my own place the next day, and it just casually I started getting back into that cycle that like I was drinking again, and I was like, okay, I can't be like this over a woman. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't bring myself down to that. And so I actually continued to still go to the same therapist that wasn't marriage counseling, but she actually switched over to just being my therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And she put me on medication for depression and anxiety. And I took it consecutively for 5-6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was like, "Oh, this is doing great. Like you seem happier. You haven't gone through any lows for 5 or 6 months. Like you're not drinking as much. Like I mean, I still drank occasionally, but I wasn't drinking every day." And everybody was like, "Oh, you're doing great. You seem a lot happier." And then I would go home, and I wasn't. I mean, I would be by myself, and they thought that I was doing better, but I wasn't. Like I felt better, but I didn't have any emotion. It was weird
Mm-hmm.
because like I actually genuinely didn't have any sort of emotion at all. Like,
Was that a scary thing?
oh,
Not
it was horrible. Like I was
not having
actually
that
dating
feeling.
this girl, and we were together for 7 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was pretty serious. Great girl, she was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just called it off. I just wasn't feeling it. I guess Tuesday afternoon, I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
You know, like I I had myself on a pedestal. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was always happy. Like I didn't need anybody to be happy. Like I was me. Which I mean, I don't need anybody to be happy, but now having been off the medication for almost 3 years, I go through my lows, but I experience actual emotions all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Like anger, which is horrible. But I experience the anger, I experience the sadness, I experience hate, I experience love, I experience everything as
Mm-hmm.
an actual emotion. And yeah, if I have to go through 2 months of a low to get all the other emotions, it's worth it to me.
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes down to being on the medication that makes you happy, but you don't care about anything. Like,
Yeah.
and you know it. Like, and I knew it in the back of my mind. Like, I didn't care if Joe Blow got hit by a car, you know, like, and that's the scary thing is like with my sister dying, I feel like if I was on that medication, it wouldn't have affected me. Like, I would have
You would have been just
been
kind of numb to it.
yeah, I would have been like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what do you guys want to go get to eat? Like,
Yeah.
and it's messed up that way. And I'm not saying by any means that medication has that effect on anybody. That's just the effect that it had on me. And you know, I've talked to people and I've talked to doctors and they were like, hey, like maybe you should try like taking half the dosage that you were taking. And I was like, no, because I don't want to run the risk of that being that way for me again. Which I mean, yes, maybe half the dosage would make me not have the lows as often. But it's also one of those I would rather have the lows than ever have to go through that of not caring anymore.
For sure.
End up living on a box somewhere without a job and being like, oh, I don't care.
Well, man, I just want to say congratulations on sobriety. I guess I don't know if I would call it sobriety. I don't know if you want to call it sobriety, but congratulations on, I guess, cutting that back. It seems like you're happy that you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like super happy about it because, like, I mean, I still enjoy a beer when cooking a steak, but I can't do that. So
yeah.
But I mean, as far as cutting back from what I was, like, I genuinely, like, health wise, I do feel better. Still tired all the time, which I mean, depression has a ton to do with that, and a lot of people don't understand that. Like, even when you're not like in a low, like you're still tired because, I mean, you just went through a low, and on top of that, like,
and you got the anxiety that just, even though you can find ways to distract yourself, you're just, your body and your mind is still working. You know,
you're working twice as hard all the time, just trying to keep your demons at bay, basically. And you know, and it gets pretty bad sometimes. Like, as far as like anxiety goes, I think anxiety is worse than depression all day. And that's just my personal opinion. That's the word I'm looking for. I don't know why that was so hard to come up with that one. No, but that's just my personal opinion. Is anxiety is worse because it's always there, and depression, you kind of know when it's coming, but that anxiety, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, you got a cable bill due, you're not gonna make it.
Hey, it's like, 2 a.m. I just wanted to wake you up and tell you something.
Yeah, you're like, dude, I just paid that yesterday, but then you have to like go through and you're like, did I actually pay that?
Did you ever find that a lot of this stuff was happening one after the other? Like, it was kind of snowballing. Like, one thing would happen and then it would just go into the next thing and the next thing, and that was kind of what also kind of led to hitting that low.
Yeah, definitely. And well, and that's kind of how this last low was, because with getting ready to file the bankruptcy, getting done with the attorney for the DUI, and then getting through the probation process of everything of the DUI, which is a nightmare because I live in Wyoming, and it being based out of Colorado is where I got the DUI, and them not transferring anything. I have to find my own places to drug test. I have to find my own counselors here. I have to find my own alcohol evaluation places. I have to go through everything here, and I have to find it all on my own. Like, they were like, here's a link that might help you, but it's all for Colorado stuff, because they don't know anything that's here either.
Yeah.
And then trying to contact a probation officer down there, that it's all of my probation's actually online. So trying to actually get a hold of somebody, because I'm not the most tech savvy person, but trying to get a hold of somebody on the phone to be like, hey, like, what do I need to do exactly? Like, because I'm not the smartest guy there is in the world, nor have I ever actually been in any sort of trouble in my life besides this. Like, never been on probation, none of this. So I'm like, okay, I don't even know how this works.
Well, and dealing with that kind of stuff, trying to get a hold of the right people, and you're doing it all over the phone with almost anything, and you're trying to get a hold of a bank or anything like that. You know, it's the most annoying thing ever when you can't just talk to a person. You know what I mean?
Well, and the risk of if something gets messed up, it's like, hey, you go to jail.
Mhm.
Like,
That adds that
the
extra layer.
risks are high.
That adds the anxiety, more anxiety.
And yeah, and the anxiety. Well, and now it's gotten me to the point that it's like, well, I guess if I go to jail, I go to jail.
Mhm.
Because and I've put myself there strictly because of the fact that I don't want to deal with the anxiety aspect of it.
Mhm.
I want to be able to, like, hey, I want to get all this done, and I have everything done. It's just a matter of, did I do it right? Did I send the paperwork to the right person?
Mhm.
Or am I just gonna magically get pulled over for going 2 miles an hour over and go to jail because I didn't file a certificate to the right person? And that's the anxiety aspect of it. Is it's like, okay, you didn't send it to the right person, so I want to call and make sure that I did send it to the right person and that they got it and everything else. And I'm like, okay, maybe you didn't. What, baby? Yeah, that's fine. And then them not answering, and then it's like, oh, now you got to wait for a phone call back, which could be a week. It could be the next time you check in, which is a month later, that they're like, oh yeah, no, we got it. And you're like, okay, well, it's good to know.
Would have been nice to know.
Yeah, it's good to know that your life isn't dangling on the line here, because mine is like gonna end if you guys tell me that I'm going to jail, because I wouldn't fare well in jail. I got too pretty of a face. Yeah, so I mean, and then with the probation and all that stuff going on, and then also getting into a new place with me and my daughter, getting her in school was something I've never done before, and thank God for my mom, because she put 4 of us in school, so she knew how to do the whole registering thing, which actually was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Like, type their name in, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we'll put her in."
Shout out to Aunt Shelly, an absolutely amazing woman.
Yes. Yeah, without her, I would be a wreck. Actually, I probably would be a working pipeline on the road, and my daughter would be reading probably Playboy magazines to try and learn the alphabet. I mean, some sort of something that I wouldn't have even known where to start.
And that's the Facebook clip. That's what we're going to use for the Facebook clip.
Yeah. No, just go look for it, dude. I'm doing the meeting like I told you. That's like the hardest thing. It's trying to find remotes. And then she adds this on top of it. She's like, "Dad, have you seen my remote?" I'm like, oh man, we lost another remote. And it's like, all right, well, there goes $20 for another remote.
Mm-hmm.
That she's probably got about 14 stuffed under her mattress. She just likes getting the new ones.
Yep. She likes the new buttons.
Yeah, exactly. They don't click just right if they're worn out. They don't make the clicky sound.
So, what has got you through a lot of this? What has got you to a point, not necessarily, gotten past your depression, because, no one's saying that you have or haven't done that, but what has gotten you to a point that you can kind of see past this, or that you can work through it, and you're comfortable to come on here and tell your story?
Actually, so until recently, until the TWNY stuff, the stuff that actually got me through a lot of my depression, and I mean, and I've heard from, like, I get the lecture from my mom all the time of, oh, it makes it worse and everything else. Is I actually used alcohol as a crutch for the longest time, but it helped me through my depression. I mean, I listened to your typical sad country music. I mean, Red Southall Band, Zach Bryan, all this stuff that I was like, okay, and drinking beer like it was water. I mean, I actually probably in the last 3 years, I probably drank more beer than I ever drank water. Like, if you saw me without a beer in my hand, it was a rare sighting, especially if it was a water instead of beer.
And look at you, dude. Not even a day over. You don't even look a day over 16. It must be doing something for you.
Yeah. Puberty hasn't hit yet. It's crazy. But I mean, alcohol did. And then with being forced to not do it, I was scared shitless. I'm not even going to lie. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. Like the stress of everything, the anxiety, not being able to shut it off, not being able to sleep, because like my anxiety used to get so bad that like I couldn't sleep unless I was physically fucked up. Like I would drink a 12 pack of beer and finally be able to sleep. And when I first quit, it was hard because I actually wasn't able to sleep. I did find myself up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just laying there, no TV, just staring at the ceiling, worried
Just
about
trying to
everything. And then actually talking about it and being able to work through stuff. And I think actually now being forced to be sober for such a period of time, working through everything in my own time, and yeah, staying up until you were just belligerently tired and finally being able to fall asleep. But I think the most part is being able to have like the stress reliefs that we've had. Like we've done a ton of camping trips as a family since
I've been seeing those on like on Facebook and stuff.
yeah, since my sister's death, we've actually got a lot closer as a family, which at first I was extremely skeptical because I mean it's one of those like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I always pictured it as like when and I mean and I was extremely angry when we were in the hospital with my sister. And I looked at it all and I was like, okay, like Joe's here, like me and Uncle Joe get along really well. But Terry and Andy, they were extremely distant, especially after my second divorce. Andy was extremely mad at me because like I made a joke out of marriage basically, but I was genuinely unhappy in a marriage that lasted 6 weeks. I mean, it was going for 6 days next. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was one of those that it was an ongoing battle with that marriage that I knew from the get-go that it wasn't going to work. And and those guys were completely distant with me. And then you walk in and it's all hugs and kisses and everything else. And like I said, I mean, I was mad. And then like Uncle Mike, like me and Uncle Mike have never been close. Like I was always that baggy pants wearing piece of shit kid, like that's just who I was. And I mean, I never pictured it as like we were close. Like we just weren't. And then like there of like hugging him and being like, well, I'm here if you need anything, like it was just like okay. And everybody saying, oh, we need to get together more, we need to become closer as a family, we need to become closer as a family. And I couldn't help but think in my mind, I was like, that's not going to happen. It was like, you really think that any of these people are going to talk to us like after this? Like a week's going to go by and everything's just going to be back to what it was. Like my life's going to be the same exact thing. Like I'm still going to be miserable. Like I'm still, and I've always pictured everything as, oh, I still have to wake up and go to work tomorrow. So what's going to change, And now I'm looking more of, okay, I don't want to have to go to work tomorrow. Like, yeah, I get to go to work tomorrow, but after work, I get to go pick up my daughter. And then I get to hang out with my girlfriend. And then we might go ride dirt bikes at the track. We might work on trucks, like finding stuff that keeps you occupied. And then actually seeing like Mom and John and Uncle Joe and Andy and Terry, and I think your dad and Lynette are going to try every once in a while. I mean, with the ranch and everything, it's actually pretty hard for everybody to get together, but they've been doing once a month, getting together and eating. And I mean, and I've seen the effect that it's had on my mom as well. And I mean, and that's a big thing for me is like, I talk to my mom pretty much all day, every day. I get bored in a piece of equipment. I'm like, hey Mom, what are you doing? Just watching it. So, I mean, but you can see a change especially in the grieving process of everything, of how much better she's become because of the family and the family getting a lot closer.
I gotta tell you, man, you're definitely not alone. When it comes to that kind of thought process you had when at the hospital. Because I know for me, when I left to go on my own, and do my own thing, I did it pretty, I severed the cord. I pretty much went and did my own thing, and I
Yeah.
didn't talk to many people. I didn't talk to you. I didn't talk to anyone. You know, I barely talked to my dad, my stepmom, and on my other side of the family, I just was very distant from everybody, just trying to do my own thing.
I actually didn't know you went to Georgia until Ashley's death. When everybody's like, "Oh, Alex is flying in from Georgia," and I was like, "Why the hell was he there?"
Exactly,
Like,
exactly, because
why?
I just, I kept everything just kind of close to the chest and just went my own way, you know, and that wasn't, it wasn't anything against anybody. I wasn't
No.
that way because of anyone, but I was also skeptical that, you know, this would bring us closer, that this would change anything, change our family dynamic.
Yeah.
And when TWNY started and they asked me to, you know, do a podcast part of this, I was like, maybe this is my opportunity to force that. You know what I mean? To jump in and just kind of make it happen instead of just hoping that the change will happen, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, and we're like our whole family, we're stubborn as hell.
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of change, of anybody actually seeing any change, was a far shot of people actually becoming closer. And honestly, like Ryan, like our cousin Ryan, like
Mm-hmm.
him coming up and hanging out and stuff, that's stuff that like never happened, you know? I mean, I'd hear from him every once in a while, but I mean, most of the time I always felt like, okay, I'm on my own. Like, we're grown. We're grown ass men. Like, we have our
Mm-hmm.
own lives. We have our own stuff for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't be focused on what you guys are doing, but then you find yourself, now I find myself throughout the day, I'm like, hey, like, I wonder what these guys are doing, you know? Like, I'll hit Daryl up randomly, and me and Daryl did not get along at
Mm-hmm.
all.
I remember.
Like, for the longest time, like, it was horrible. You couldn't put us in a room for more than 5 minutes together,
Mm-hmm.
or we were fighting. And now, I mean, I'll hit him up randomly just to see how he's doing. I mean, there's tons of times me and Dylan talk consistently all the time. I mean, my direct family, like, I've stayed in pretty close contact. I mean, we've talked since I found out that I was going to come on here and do the podcast. I mean, we'll send each other gifts every once in a while. I mean, I was going to send y'all a booty pic earlier, but, you know,
Yeah.
I figured you really wanted to see that. So,
Oh, geez. Well, I guess that's something I can look forward to later then.
hey, but now I know I mean, I already said it, so now I kind of have to do it, you know. Remington Grace, come here. Oh, sorry. I'm going to give her this tablet that's not working. Here, go watch it on the tablet. Go plug it in, though, before it dies. I think that's what happened, is it died because it just turned back on. So who knows how good I am with plugging stuff in technology. It sat on this TV stand for 3 weeks dead. Shows how much I use that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, now that we've all like slowly become closer and been able to actually talk, and now that it's not as fresh, being able to actually talk about, you know, our sister, because there was, I mean, 2 weeks after, I couldn't even think about it. Like, I
Mhm.
did everything that I could to not even think about her name, because it was just instant tears. Like, that's, and it's something that like I was close with her, but I wasn't like close. I mean,
Mhm.
for since my ex-girlfriend had left, like I had moved in with my mom. I, you know, and she had lived there with my mom. So I mean, we'd lived together, but it wasn't still one of those like, oh, hey, we hang out all the time. Like, me and her
Mhm.
son hung out all the time. Like, he was consistently in there, and I was teaching him things that you probably should not teach a 3-year-old little boy. I mean, all in there Tinder swiping and playing video games and all kinds of stuff, you know, just
Yeah.
just guy stuff, just hanging out, having
Yeah.
guy time. And you know, I love that little kid to death. He's going to be a riot, that's for dang sure. But and that was the hardest thing for me, was, you know, leaving her son behind.
Mhm.
And I was mad about it. But now, I mean, you see it as more of I hate to say an opportunity, but it brought us closer. And I mean, we weren't
Mhm.
close with Rain or any of those guys at all. I mean, we actually were super pissed at him when all this happened, and it's actually brought us a lot closer.
Mhm. That's what I've
And
heard, and I look forward to hopefully talking to him as well. I think that
yeah, I
might be
think that'd
happening
be
in the future.
great, especially, I mean, especially with his experience of it, because a lot of people don't have that experience, that it's that direct person. I mean, I say a lot of people, but there are actually a lot of people out there that they lose their significant other, that person. And this is, I mean, with depression and anxiety, and it could be a one-day deal. Like, you've never had depression in your life, and then it just hits you, and it's like, oh,
and this is it. You know, you're like, wow, this is what people have been talking about.
And I mean, and a lot of people look at it from like a religious aspect of, oh, if it's my time, it's my time, or oh, if you kill yourself, you go to hell, or all this other stuff. I've never been like a super religious person. It's not my cup of tea. I mean, I believe in what I believe, but I don't believe that if you kill yourself, you go to hell. I don't see it. I just don't. To me, there's no science to it. There's none of that. Like,
yeah,
if it was your time and you felt like it was your time, then it was your time. Like, if it was that bad that you had to, then, I mean, I'm not saying do it, like, at all.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, then I think that's the point of like the TWNY is like, okay, you need to talk to somebody. If you feel like that's your only option, then yeah, talk to somebody. And maybe you don't need to go to the therapist like right away. Maybe this is the first time you've ever felt like that. Like, hey, maybe then talking to somebody that's actually been through that and actually feels that with depression, or even just feels it regularly. They're like, hey, like on a regular basis, hey, this is an actual problem that everybody has. Like, everybody feels that at least once in their life of, it'd just be better if I wasn't here.
Oh, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what I think the purpose of this is to let people know that they're not the only ones feeling this, you know? I know now that if I, you know, God forbid, I go through a divorce, or I'm going through, issues with attorneys or things like that, you know, or I'm finding myself looking at the bottom of a bottle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that now. I know you've been there too, and you're someone I can reach out, and I'm not alone. And I think that's what this is letting people know that they're not alone.
Oh, exactly. And that nobody's judging you for having those problems. Everybody's, and we live in a world now that everybody's so worried about their likes on Facebook and their Instagram and who retweeted whatever that is. I don't know
Yeah.
if that really works. But you know, or how many heart reacts you can get on TikTok for shaking your butt or whatever. I mean, it's one of those, everybody's so worried about that, and everybody's so worried about what everybody thinks of them, that they're not stepping back to realize that, like, hey, my neighbor 2 doors down is having the same problem that I have. I've seen him sit outside and drink consistently every day from 3 o'clock until 9 o'clock at night. Like, maybe he's just having a good time, or maybe he's going through some shit. Maybe just go sit down and talk to him.
Yeah.
Because you're not any different. Who's to say that 2 weeks from now you're going to be sitting out on your porch for 3-4 days because you're going through it. And it's okay to go through it. Everybody goes through it. We're in the middle of a pandemic, if that's what you want to call it. Not going to get into governmental issues, but we're in the middle of a pandemic where everybody's trapped inside their house or being forced to get a vaccination or get all of this stuff that it's weighing. If it doesn't give you anxiety, then you have a problem.
Yeah,
like,
it's been a horrible year for mental health.
Yeah,
horrible couple years, honestly.
If you're not worried about where we're going as a country, or where we're, how this is going to affect our jobs, how it's going to affect our life, that's anxiety. And it's not something it's not just going to go away. So why not talk about it? Why not be like, hey, this is directly affecting me this way. Like, I could potentially lose my job. And then what do I do? Like, talk to somebody who, I mean, I worked pipeline for 9 years. You could get laid off tomorrow from making $2,200 a week take home to, hey, now you got $800 a month truck payment, $1,400 rent at home, and then $300 car payment for your wife. You got your hotel payment or your RV camp spot payments. You've got cell phones, you got insurance, you got toys, you got all this stuff that you got to pay for, and
Mhm.
you just got laid off. You came into work and they were like, "Hey, by the way, thanks for your help, but we don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
We're done with we're done with ditching."
Well,
So,
and so many people have been in that position.
oh, as soon as and again with the political stuff, but as
Yeah.
soon as Biden got into office and signed away, what was it? Some 60,000 jobs,
Mhm.
oil field jobs were lost like the same day, and it's that's 60,000 people that are sitting at home. And I know people personally, like one of my really good friends sat at home for 5 months without a job because he got laid off because of the pipeline.
That weighs on a person.
That's 5 months of not being able, barely scraping by to maybe be able to pay your bills with the unemployment, but
Mhm.
probably not. I mean, knowing a lot of these oil field hands that like you have to have the diesel truck with the drag tank or the welder. I mean, you have to have these nice trucks that, I mean, yeah, they're expensive. You make good money when you're doing it, but it weighs on you because once you're laid off, you're stuck not being able to pay those things. I mean, that directly affects your family. Wait for it to charge. Just go, dude. And I mean, it directly affects your family and your lifestyle and
Mhm.
what you do. And now a lot of people are going through that because of the pandemic. That I mean, oil field, we were used to it. I'm gonna get laid off in 2 months. This is a 2 month job.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be laid off, and then I might have to travel to North Dakota, which is 12 hours away, to go work on a pipeline over there, so that I can send money back to my family, so that we can afford to pay for stuff, so that they can
Mhm.
have a good life, so that we can have those prime rib dinners when we get them. But most of the time, it's McDonald's drive-throughs and sitting in the that's you get a McChicken that you eat for lunch tomorrow that you saved that's going to be covered in dirt by 10 o'clock anyways.
Just adds extra protein.
Oh, exactly. You get real lucky if you get one of the beetles that fly up and land on it. But,
Well, Jesse, if you know, as we kind of gear towards the end here, if you do you have any advice for someone going through the experiences that you've gone through specifically? Do you have any advice for someone who's at their lowest of lows right now, who or they think that they are? You know what I mean? What's your
at
advice?
their lowest, I mean, honestly, the best thing that I can say is like if you are drinking and you're drowning yourself in that bottle, go somewhere. Don't drive by any means.
Yeah,
Don't do,
don't
don't make
drive. No,
that
no,
mistake.
no
Don't
drinking
drive.
and driving.
Don't drive. But like Uber somewhere. Go to a bar. Sit there. Find the same guy that's sitting there by himself and just strike up a conversation because he's probably going through it too. You guys can sit there and you can vent, and then you're gonna go home and you're gonna realize like, hey, you know, this guy, I mean, he might have had a worse life than you, or you might have had a worse life than him,
Mhm.
but you got it off your chest. You were able to talk about it. I mean, don't lock yourself in your house. Don't be alone. And a lot of people feel like they are alone. But definitely go out, and I mean, even if you're outside doing it, go sit on the porch. Somebody's walking by on the sidewalk. Just say, "Hey, how's it going?" Make an effort to just see the world as far as through a different set of eyes.
Mhm.
Get out and stop drowning yourself in your home. Like be some sort of active, you know, walk somewhere. If you gotta I mean, I'm pretty sure public intoxication is still a thing, but I mean, you can walk around the block with a beer. I feel like that's
Yeah.
typically normally okay. But
Basically, reaching out to someone,
yeah,
not
reach
doing
out.
this alone and feeling like you're alone.
And that's definitely like, especially when I was like heavy drinking, is I ended up once it because I actually sold all my firearms. I got rid of everything so that I wasn't putting myself in that position.
Mhm.
I was able to leave my house, and I'd go over to my neighbor's house and I'd just sit there and BS with him for an hour. And eventually it got to the point that I was like, like I like hanging out with this guy. I'm gonna go talk to him. And then I would go over there without a beer, and then next thing you know, you're not drinking, you're just hanging out. You know, you've got friends, you've got people that like you don't think actually care about you, but they can grow to care about you. And
Absolutely,
you'll
man.
be actually extremely surprised that a stranger actually cares. Like, you might not think that the next door neighbor cares about you, but if you were to walk over on his door and be like, "Hey man, you want to have a beer?" Guarantee you'll sit there and have a conversation. Just strictly because of the fact that, I mean, he might just be like, "Hey, like, either you need somebody to talk to or you just don't want to drink alone." Yeah, other than that, the rest of it's all doctor stuff, and I don't think you want to hear my PhD talk.
Well, hey man, that was really well said. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on the podcast, for being brave enough to step up and do this. I know it's not easy being in the hot seat and sharing your story.
I mean, definitely thanks for having me.
Absolutely,
It's
man.
actually a lot easier once you start getting it out, that just comes out a
And that's
lot
what we're
easier.
trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. And just for anyone else, for anyone listening, if you want to be on this podcast, email me at atelk@twny.life, and we'll get you scheduled to do that. And thanks for stopping by, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.